Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this employment law session. I am, of course, the employment lawyer Lior Samfiru, one of the founding partners of Samfiru Tumarkin LLP, and I am here to answer your questions, to talk to you about employment law, to tell you what you need to know about your workplace rights. This is a live session. You get to ask questions. I get to answer them. I get to hopefully alleviate some of the concerns that you have, to tell you what the law is, what the law does, and of course, to make sure that you have some resources if you're facing a workplace problem. So my firm, we operate across Ontario, BC, and Alberta. We have lawyers in all those provinces. So if you have an employment law issue, we got you covered. Right now, you can ask questions. So maybe you're wondering what to do if you lost your job or are worried about losing your job. Ask the question right now. I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you what to know. I'll tell you what the law is. Maybe you're concerned because all of a sudden your job has changed, your hours of work, your pay, what to do, etc. Well, why not ask me now and let me tell you exactly what this all means. If you're being mistreated or bullied or something was taken away from you, temporary layoff, I can go on. This is about you and your rights. You get to make sure that you direct the conversation. You can be the second voice on this session by asking questions, by telling me what your problem is and giving me that opportunity to help. So type in your question and let's make sure we get answers. Before I start answering questions, let me give you some other contact information. If you want to learn a lot more about employment law, or if you want to connect with myself and my team, so easy to do. All you do is you go to employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. And that address is on the screen right now. And when you go there, you'll be able to find answers, solutions, and of course, contact information. You can reach out to me and my team by phone, by email. If you prefer, you can fill out a form and my team will call you. It's that easy to do, employmentlawyer.ca. But right now, I am live. I'm going to start answering questions right now. Again, I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer with Samfiru Tumarkin LLP, and you've come to the right place to get questions answered. Let's get going on that. And as you listen to me answer questions, ask yours. Make sure you do that so you don't run out of time, so you don't get disappointed if you don't get your questions answered. So I'm going to start answering questions. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Our first question comes to us from Facebook, and this is Malcolm's question. What if your company is bought by a new company? Can your new employer change your wage? Generally speaking, the answer is no. Anytime you're looking at a change of compensation north of 10%, so 12, 15% or more, that could be a constructive dismissal. That means, doesn't necessarily mean you can stop the company. You can't, go to the police and say, hey, police, stop them from changing my pay. What that means is you may be able to treat this situation as a termination of employment, constructive dismissal. Same thing happens if it's a new company that's taken over. If they're offering you a job at less pay, you don't have to accept that and you can get severance from the seller. If you started working for the new company and then they reduce your pay, again, north of 10%, then you're in a position to say constructive dismissal. So this idea of constructive dismissal is very important for everyone to remember and understand. If you're looking at a significant change to the terms of employment, you have to think constructive dismissal. So what kind of changes we're talking about? Like I said, the change in pay, a significant change in pay for sure. A demotion, change in your hours. Maybe you used to work 9 to 5, now they want you to work 12 to 8. Change to your days of work. You used to work weekdays, now they want you to work weekends. I think you get the idea. Anytime you're looking at a significant change in terms of employment, you may have the option to say, wait a second, I'm not okay with that. I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to look at this, consider this to be a termination of my employment. I'm going to leave and I'm going to force the company to pay me severance. If that happens to you, if you want to pursue or consider or even discuss a constructive dismissal, call me before you do anything. Don't walk into your employer's office and quit. Call me. Let's make sure we have that discussion before. To connect with me, you see that address on the screen right now, employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. Thank you for that question, Malcolm. See how easy to do. If you've just joined us, I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer with Samfiru Tumarkin LLP, and I'm here live answering questions. I want to answer your questions. More questions have come in, so let's make sure we get those questions answered. All right. Next question, I should say. Henry has a question. Do you have any workers' compensation lawyers in your office? I'm in Red Deer, Alberta. So no, Henry. We deal with disputes between employees and employers. So workers' compensation issues are different. Again, we only deal with disputes between employees and employers. Now, that said, we have connections at other firms. So if you need a referral for a lawyer that deals with workers' compensation, contact my office and we'll send you that referral. Of course, to connect with my office and my team, employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. All right, let's see. Thank you for that question. Again, I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer, reading and answering your questions. Next question is from Ash MK. Can an employer revoke your workplace accommodations? It's been 2 years, but they are saying they can't do it now. So the short answer is no, they cannot. What I mean by that is if you still need those accommodations and your doctor still says that you need the accommodations, they have to provide that accommodations. Now, if something has happened in the workplace and all of a sudden they're not able to, I don't know, maybe they sold half the building, I don't know, and now they can't accommodate you, well, they may say it's just not possible anymore. But if they simply say, you know what, 2 years is enough, we just don't want to do this anymore, illegal, can't do that. That could be a human rights violation. The failure to accommodate is illegal. The only time a company doesn't have to accommodate, if it's really so hard that it's almost impossible. It's a very high standard. And if they've been accommodating for the last 2 years, clearly they are able to accommodate you. So for them to say now, all of a sudden, we're just not going to do it anymore, not legal in most cases. So no, Ash MK, they can't. If they do that, here's what you do. You get on the phone, you call myself, my office, and we'll deal with it. We'll help you, okay? To connect with me and my team, Ash, easy to do. You see that address on the screen, employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. That's how easy it is to do, Ash, but hopefully you understand now that duty to accommodate is one of the most important obligations that employers have, okay? So they can't ignore it. They can't decide that they don't want to do this. They have to do it. There's no option, okay? employmentlawyer.ca. All right, let's see. Continuing to answer questions. By the way, if you've just clicked on this link and you've joined me just now, thank you for joining me. Welcome. My name is Lior Samfiru. I'm the employment lawyer, one of the partners of Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. See the address and the name on the screen. I'm going to continue answering questions, but if you've just joined us, why not type in your question about employment law, about workplace rights? Give me that opportunity to help you, to inform you about those rights. So many misconceptions out there. So many people believe things that are just not true. They're completely false. Don't let that happen to you. On this session right now, you can get the truth, the facts, the right information, and that's why I'm here. All right, let's continue answering questions. Let's see. Next question is from Shaden. I work at a retail store on a salary, but working 44 hours. Is this legal or do they have to pay overtime? So you're not telling me what province you're in, Shaden. Let's assume, for example, you're in Ontario. In Ontario, overtime has to be paid for anything over 44 hours a week. So if you work 45 hours a week, you have to get paid one extra hour at time and a half. The way you calculate your overtime rate is you take your weekly salary, you divide that by 44, whatever you get there is your hourly rate, and then time and a half is your overtime rate. So, Shaden, if you work 45, again, if you're in Ontario, then you have to get paid an extra hour. Other provinces have different rules and different laws and thresholds. But in Ontario, 44 hours a week, anything over that, time and a half. So yes, you're owed an hour extra at your time and a half overtime rate. Again, assuming you're in Ontario. Thank you for that question. Okay, let's see. I have Ellie here. Ellie has 4 different submissions. Let's see if I can get through those. My employer is planning to reduce my commission structure, for doing the same job. I've worked for the company for 24 years. They gave me 16 months notice. My colleague got 18 months notice. Okay, so here's how this works. the question is 16 months notice enough? And you've been there for 24 years. I don't know exactly your age, but you're probably owed anywhere from 20 to 24 months notice. So what does that mean? That means that after 16 months, you can choose to consider your employment as being terminated, constructively dismissed, because they don't have a right to change your hours of or your commission structure. And then you can get severance for the difference. So let's say you're owed 20 months notice. They only give you 16 months. Well, you can leave at the end of the 16 months and take action to get the remainder 4. So you'd get that by way of severance. So they have to give you, let's say, 20 months as a combination of severance or notice. If they give you 16 months, they would owe you 4 months. But you'd have to decide, is that good for you? Would you rather leave after 16 months and get 4 months pay, or would you rather just stay and accept a new commission structure? That's up to you. If you want to pursue this constructive dismissal 16 months from now, don't do anything until you speak to me or my team, okay? Don't walk into your employer's office and quit or do anything until you connect with me through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. If they gave you enough notice, potentially they wouldn't owe you anything else, but because 60 months does appear to be at least 4 months, maybe even more, less than what you're owed, they have to pay you that difference, but only if you choose to leave them and not stay there anymore. So hopefully that makes sense, Ellie. Any follow-up questions? I'm still here. By all means, ask them, and let's make sure that you get the right information. Thank you for that. Fantastic questions today, by the way. Important questions. Questions that you're not just going to be able to go online and find answers to. That's exactly why I'm here. That's exactly why I'm doing this session. So you can ask as many questions as you want to. By the way, if you've just joined us, why not ask your question and get me, Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer, to answer it, to tell you what you need to know. All right, let's continue answering questions. Love questions. Keep them coming. I want to have questions from beginning to end. Love that. That makes so much better. Makes it so much better. All right, next question is from R. Menzi. The employer asked me when I would be returning from short-term disability. I gave them a date and they responded with a termination. Is this allowed? No, 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 no. It's not allowed. Now, if they can show that the termination had absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with your disability, maybe at that point it just becomes a severance issue. But for them to ask you when you're returning and then they just terminate you, it doesn't look good, does it? It does seem that the termination had everything to do with your disability. So potentially it's a human rights violation, because you can't let someone go because they're disabled, because they're sick. So our Menzi, number one is we have to make sure you get proper severance, because I can almost assure you, whatever they said they're going to pay you in severance is not what you're owed. It's less than what you're owed. I can almost guarantee you that. In addition to that, based on what I said, they may also owe you damages for human rights violations. So our Menzi, this is where you need to contact myself, my team, as soon as possible. I want you to do that today. Okay, all you do is you go to employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. Look at that address right there. And when you get there, phone number is there, email address is there. You can call, you can email, fill out a form. We'll call you if you want. Whatever you want to do, you have to do that. So no, it's not legal. They obviously owe you compensation, and let's deal with that properly. Let's make sure you get what you are owed. By the way, I mentioned severance here to our Menzi. I want to take a short break here before I continue answering questions and tell you more about severance. I want to tell you how you can find out for yourself right now how much severance you're owed. It's so easy to do. All you do is you can go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Hey, wouldn't you know it? The address is on the screen right now. Again, it's pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. And when you get there, you click on the severance calculator. Ta-da, that's it. That's how easy it is to do. By going there and using the severance calculator, you can find out in seconds how much severance you're owed. And you may say, wait a second, I don't need to do that. I know what it is. I get a week per year or 2 weeks per year. No, stop. Nonsense. Absolutely not. It's not what the law is. You're owed much more than that. Okay? The severance calculator calculates what you're actually owed, what the law says you should have. So you go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, you click on the severance calculator, you answer a couple of questions, and it's done. It's over. By the way, completely free. completely anonymous. No names, no company names, no phone numbers, no credit cards, none of that. Okay, it's just there for you. Pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Well over 2 million people across Canada have used it. It's probably closer to 2.5 million now. Do that as well. Okay, if you lost your job, if you're worried about losing your job, if you're just curious or interested, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Click on the severance calculator. All right, let's see. I am going to continue answering questions. More have come in, fantastic, but answer your questions as well. Or ask your question as well. I'll answer it. All right, our next question is on YouTube from Brett. Do you think it was worth it for employers to terminate staff over vaccine mandates? Well, is it worth it? I think that ultimately an employer has to decide in their workplace whether it was worth it, whether or not they made the workplace better. I can tell you that to let people go because of their vaccine status without severance, not legal in most cases, okay? Wrongful dismissal. We've resolved hundreds, if not thousands of those cases. So I can't speak to individual employers. I can't say what company should or should not have done, other than to say that if a company let someone go because of their vaccine status and didn't pay them severance, that would have likely have been a wrongful dismissal. So thank you for that question, Brett. Continuing to answer questions. By the way, I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer. You're here in my employment law session where you get to answer questions and get informed and educated about employment law. This is what we're here to do, and I'm going to continue answering questions. But by the way, you still have time to ask yours. Don't start asking your question when I'm about to wrap up, because I won't be able to get to it. All right, I'm going to be done here in about 12, 13 minutes. So if you're going to ask a question, gosh, ask it right now. You have time. I have time to answer it. So let's make it happen. All right, Tony has our next question. Tony, don't worry about policing this channel here. All right, next question is from Hanaya. Can I sue my job for mandating me to take the vaccine, forcing employees to resign, but later on retracting it and no longer wanted people to be vaccinated? So if you took the vaccine because your employer told you, no, you cannot take legal action against your employer. You can take legal action for against your employer if you lost your job because of your vaccine status and if you didn't get your full severance. But if your employer says we need to have you get the vaccine and you decided to do that, no, you cannot take legal action for that. All right. So let's see, continuing to answer questions. Ask yours, by the way. I'm Lior Samfiru, answering questions. Next question is from Steph. I'm working on a contract. The last several years renewed annually. Employer said they are not going to renew next month because I'm a contract. They said I'm not owed severance. Is this true? No, it's not true. So this is what happens often when you're on a contract that renews every year. After a few of those contracts, let's say 3 or so, in many cases, the law is going to say, you know what, you're not really on a contract. You're now a regular indefinite employee. What that means is that if you're let go at some point, you're going to be owed severance. Now, if you sign 2 contracts, probably not enough. If it's 3, 4, 5, 10, probably more than enough that you're going to be owed severance. So I see this often. Company has you sign many contracts once a year, and then after several years, they say, you know what, this year, no more contracts. This year, we're not going to renew. We're just going to let the contract expire and say goodbye to you. Not so fast. In that situation, that employee is likely an indefinite employee, meaning full severance is owed. That severance can be as much as 24 months' pay, depending on how long that person has been there. I did a matter just very recently with a private school teacher. She had signed the contract for, I think, 10 or 12 years. And after that 12th year, the school said, no, we're not going to renew anymore. But no severance because you're on a contract. Nonsense. She got over a year's pay. Guess why? Because, yeah, she was no longer on a contract. It's always about substance over form. If you look like a regular employee and act like a regular employee, you are a regular employee, and it doesn't matter what you sign. Hopefully that makes sense. Any follow-up, any issues, call me. Let's talk about it. You can connect with me through employmentlawyer Again, employmentlawyer.ca. All right, let's continue to answer questions. Jeff says 13 years, 8 weeks offered. That's ridiculous. So Jeff, you can go right now to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, and use the severance calculator. And I bet you'll see that you're owed probably 12 months of severance. 12 months, not 8 weeks, 12 months, not 12 weeks, 12 months. So nonsense. That's a wrongful dismissal with a cherry on top. So what do you do, Jeff? Easy, easy, easy. You connect with me, my team, very easy to do. employmentlawyer.ca, or by the way, if you use the severance calculator, there's a link there. You can click that, or a button to connect with me directly from the severance calculator. Either way, let's talk immediately. 8 weeks after 13 years, ridiculous. It's probably right around 12 months. So you know now what to do, Jeff. Again, connect with me, waiting to hear from you. All right, Hanaya says that no, she didn't take the vaccine. She lost her job because it was against her belief. So if you lost your job, yes, you could take legal action for severance, but this assumes that this happened less than 2 years ago. There's a 2-year limitation period. Again, 2-year limitation period. So if you lost your job more than 2 years ago, unfortunately, you're out of time. But potentially there's some ways around that depending on what they said to you, if they promised to call you back at some point, etc. So we can talk about that. To connect with me, Hanaya, easy to do, employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. All right, let's see. By the way, last 8 minutes or so, you can still ask your question. You have time. I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer with Samfiru, Tumarkin, LLP, and I want to spend the last few minutes doing what I've been doing for the last 20 or so minutes, and that is to answer your questions. All right, next question comes to us from Joe B. The employer is closing down and moving staff to new locations. They put me in a facility over an hour away and said if I didn't accept, then I have resigned. Do I have to accept this change? So here's the thing, Joe. The question is not whether the new facility is an hour away from the old facility. The question is the new facility going to take you an extra hour to get to as opposed to what you're doing right now? So let's say right now it takes you 20 minutes to go to work. If the new facility is going to be an hour and 20 minutes, an extra hour, then guess what? That could easily be a constructive dismissal. Meaning it's not a resignation if you don't do this, it's a termination, and you're going to be owed severance. Now, if it's going to take you really only an extra 30 minutes, you're not going to be happy, I get that, but it's probably not enough to be a constructive dismissal. So that hour is a good threshold to look at. So it's not a question of how far the new locations are, it's a question of how long it takes you to work, because the new location could be an hour away, but it could be actually closer to your home, so it may take you less time. So how long does it take you to go to work more now than it did before? Yeah. So, okay. So Joe just said he lives around the corner from the current location. It takes him 5 minutes to drive. So if this is going to be now an extra hour, constructive dismissal. But before you say no to your employer, before you tell your employer to jump in the lake, call me, okay? Contact us at the office through employmentlawyer.ca. Let's have a chat about that. But that's a very important question. I get that asked often. What happens if we relocate? Well, if it impacts you significantly, i.e. it's going to be an extra hour, it's not a resignation if you don't do it. It's a constructive dismissal. Your employer has changed the terms of employment. So that's the answer, Joe. But next step, of course, connect with me through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. All right, let's see. Next question from Shmara. How do the courts decide what is considered harassment in the workplace? What if someone falsely claims harassment? Well, the person that claims harassment has to prove it. It's simple as that. You know, the one that's accused doesn't have to disprove harassment. The person that's claiming they were harassed or mistreated have to prove it. Now, it's not like in criminal court. You don't have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to prove it based on what we call the balance of probabilities. So in other words, there's more than 50% likelihood that that's correct. So how do you prove that? Maybe you have a recording or something in writing, or there's a witness that can corroborate. If it's just your word against someone else's, it may not be enough. So that's what the law does. The law says, okay, if you're being harassed, mistreated, absolutely, we will give you every opportunity to prove it, but you have to prove it. So you can record someone if you need to. You can write them an email confirming what was said. There's various ways to prove harassment. It's actually not that hard. If you want to talk about that more, by all means, Mara, let's have a chat, and I'm happy to connect with you. Employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. All right, let's see if we get a couple last questions. Next one is from Rob. Can an employer put you on a standby shift and not compensate you for this? So again, this does vary from province to province. Best advice is connect with me off air so I can get some more information, or go to the Ministry of Labor in your province and get the information there. In some provinces, they have to pay, in others, they don't. So it really does depend on location. Let's see. Next question is on YouTube from Matt. My wife is changing their policy to allow workers time off, provided they pay back an amount for the time missed, although they're not paid for the time they missed. Is this legal? So I'm not sure I understand this question, Matt. So here's how this works. An employer is required to allow you to be off if you have a medical note. And there's no conditions on that. They don't have to pay you in most cases, but you can be off work as long as you want to. But if the company says, hey, we'll give you other time off, maybe because you want to go play golf, or maybe because you want to go to your kid's place, we're going to give you time off. But if you want that time off, you have to pay us a certain amount. That's ridiculous, but it's not illegal, because the company doesn't have to provide that time off to begin with, so they can essentially put whatever conditions they want. What they can't put conditions is if it's medical reasons. If you have a doctor's note that says you need to be off for a day, for a week, for a year, you can be off. No conditions, no issues, no problems. So hopefully that makes sense in that situation, Matt, and that helps you. All right. You know what? I'm going to take one last question. This is on Reddit from Lanky. My mother has worked part-time as a cashier for the last few months. She loves the job, but has been struggling with joint problems and is often unable to stand for long periods. The company says its policy is that its cashiers stand and only take breaks at allotted times. Is there any way she can request accommodation for the joint pain? How would she go about this? Absolutely. All she needs is to say that she's all she needs is a doctor's note saying she cannot stand for more than this amount of time, or she needs these types of break. And her employer has to accommodate. It's going to be very easy to accommodate her by putting a chair, for example, or allowing her to take certain breaks. So that's absolutely an accommodation. Now, it's not enough for her to say, hey, employer, I need this accommodation. She needs a doctor's note. If in the face of a doctor's note, they don't do it, they ignore her, they say, we don't want to, it's not fair to someone else, that's illegal. That could be a human rights violation. So get that doctor's note. The doctor's note has to be as detailed as possible in terms of the limitations that she has. If they still want to accommodate her, have her call me, okay? Connect with me immediately through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. Last question here. I like this question. Bronto, why is it that everyone says that severance is 1 week per year if that's not the case? It seems confusing. It is confusing. That's why I'm here. That's why I started doing radio shows and TV shows, 12 years ago, because people were believing this misinformation. It's not the case. Why people believe that? Because there's so much misleading information out there. It's a dangerous place to go to Google and to try to find answers to your legal questions. Just like, if you were sick and you try to get an answers to your sickness on Google, probably going to be a problem. You should speak to a doctor. Just like I said, if you lose your job, you want to know your rights, you speak to someone like myself, an employment lawyer. So no, Bronto, it's not a week per year. It's significantly more. You could work for a company for 4 months and could be owed 4 months severance. So hopefully you understand. And to find out how much you're owed, easy, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Click on the severance calculator. You find the right information. Guys, this is the time I've had for today. Thank you. Again, I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer with Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. But don't fear. My colleague Thielen is going to be right here Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern to answer more of your questions, to make sure you have more answers. But by the way, you don't even have to wait until then. If you want to connect with me and my team, you can do that today. Just go to employmentlawyer.ca and we'll have that conversation as soon as possible. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Again, Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer. Always a privilege to be here to get all these questions and the opportunity to help you. I'll talk to you again very soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.